I'm Yugi. Yugi. You guys probably know me. Today I'm going to be going over voice training. Um, and kind of like my experience, my journey, and trying to help other people get into voice training because, especially when I started it, it was kind of tricky. I feel like I had to learn a lot of things myself. So I'm just trying, the whole purpose of this is I just want you guys to have a better idea of voice training when you walk away from this little segment of the stream. So you guys can start your own journey if that's something you're interested in. So how voice training works is it just enhances the sound of your voice while preventing harm. So you don't want to fall victim to things like vocal straining, because that can cause a lot of stress on your vocal cords and damage your voice permanently, hopefully only temporarily. Thank you so much for the follow, Moon. And then some kind of myth about voice training is it's not faking a voice. Like I said, you're just enhancing your voice. You're basically training your brain to naturally sound a specific way. So while you could kind of be like, well, technically it's faking at first, that's not how it stays, if that makes sense. Because that's kind of the whole point of training. It's like muscle memory, if I have to explain it that way. Oh yeah, another myth about voice training is a lot of people think that voice cracks and voice flips aren't normal, or at least I thought so at first. I thought it was kind of an indication of like a bad voice or faking, or I was just very insecure about it. So I just want to reassure everyone who's interested in voice training, voice cracks and voice flips are normal. You can probably recall middle school and high school, everyone's going through puberty, everyone's having voice cracks and voice slips. That's just because as your voice is changing, those kinds of things might occur. Of course, having a voice crack because you're trying to force yourself to hit a note that you might not be able to, that of course isn't normal. And be on the lookout for that, but I'll kind of go into how to avoid that kind of stuff later on. So fun fact, voice training is super common among singers and actors. So that's, why I said most of the people who do voice training aren't even trans. They're going to be like your singers, your actors, because of course, if you are, if you're practicing to sound like a certain character, you have to train your voice to do that. If you want to hit certain high notes or do vibratos or hold these big long notes, you have to do voice training to do all those things. So every time you're listening to a song, just know that is the product of countless hours of voice training. And it's something that you can easily get into. You can like dip your toes into it and, see if voice training is something you are maybe interested in. I know also, I didn't put it up on here, but I know that there are some like radio talk show hosts or like, what are they called? I guess like not news anchors, but maybe news anchors, hosts, basically anyone in the entertainment industry, probably does voice training so that they can sound a little louder, a little more pleasing. But as I'm talking about voice training and all of the hours that are put into it, you're actually training over 100 muscles. So you're training your neck muscles, your jaw muscles, your chest, your lips, your tongue. They're all coming together to produce your voice. If there's ever a time where you feel like, oh, voice training is just impossible for me, voice training is too much for me, just remember that you are trying to train over 100 muscles. So be patient, give yourself some time, and I promise you will get the results that you want. Also, use or lose your voice. Since your voice, your vocal cords aren't actually cords, I think I skipped over that one. Oh my goodness. Your vocal cords are actually two folds of muscle. I tried to draw it. It kind of looks inappropriate. I'm just going to draw it again. So imagine like this is your neck. you know, this hole, that's the circle of your neck. You're working down it. Your vocal cords will basically be right there. Those are your vocal folds, and when you're speaking, they either like get a little wider, so they move out that way, or they get a little narrower. Of course, when they get narrower, that's when you're gonna have kind of a higher pitched voice. And whenever they get wider, that's when you're gonna have a lower pitched voice. Also, research suggests that voice training for singers and stuff that do voice training, it can reduce vocal aging, which vocal aging is basically just like if you know how older people can kind of sound a lot different from how they were in their youth. It's basically what voice aging is. So if you are a singer or if you do voice training, since you have more control over your voice, you can kind of mitigate the effects of that. And then hormones can actually affect your voice control. So of course, if you are on testosterone or going through testosterone puberty, it's going to make your voice lower. So that is a direct way of it affecting. And then also, I didn't know this, but like when your hormone levels fluctuate, so, for people who get their periods, or just if you're starting hormones, like you Space Goth, you said you started like a month and a half ago, I think. So as your hormone levels fluctuate, your control over your vocal techniques can vary because of hormones affecting like your vocal folds. Basically, it's hard to explain. I'm not a scientist. I am but a streamer and an artist, so this isn't my realm of expertise, but it's definitely something that can happen. How to prep for voice training. So I'd say the biggest one is understanding what you're looking for whenever it comes to your voice. You don't have to have a specific idea in mind. You don't have to be like, oh, I'm going to sound exactly this way at exactly this pitch. But just kind of have an idea of what exactly you're trying to work towards. Because that will make seeing the progress in your journey a lot easier. And it'll also make how you approach voice training easier to unpack. For me, I knew I just wanted a higher voice, so I kind of was looking into ways that I could control my voice at higher pitches. So just having some kind of idea. And then also, throat soothing techniques. Have those on hand, know them. They will be your best friend. Of course, you don't want to strain your voice, but as you're doing voice training, it's inevitable that your vocal folds might be a little uncomfortable because you are working them a lot more. You are trying to get a specific result. So it's good to have stuff like water. Very important to stay hydrated while you're voice training. You can also have some tea, which is good for soothing your throat. Other things are soup broth, if you like that. Non-caffeinated drinks too, because the caffeination kind of, like whenever I'm drinking caffeination, I can feel it kind of like bubbling against my throat. I'm not going to say that's going to necessarily damage your voice because I'm not too sure, but I do know that it's not recommended really for voice training or soothing your throat. It might agitate if you have any kind of like even minor strains or aches back there. And then also cough drops, if you might need those. There's some throat soothing cough drops you can usually get over the counter at any kind of convenience store. And then another thing, this is completely optional, but it's something that I used. So I used a musical tuner. You can have a physical one or you can have one online. You go to tuner.ninja. It's on the slide. That is a web-based musical tuner, and it basically, like if I was to hold out a note and go like, ah, it would tell me what kind of note that is. I use this whenever I was getting into voice training, because you can kind of hold out a note of where your voice naturally sits and then adjust to go up only 1 or 2 notes at a time to reduce the kind of, pressure that you're putting on your voice. There's also mental cues. So I personally used subliminal voice videos. If you have ever seen those or heard of them, you can probably look them up on YouTube. But the whole idea behind it is you just want to have something that kind of gives you the mental cue of reminding you that you should be voice training. Because if you are doing voice training, it can be kind of easy to lose it as the session goes on. Like I might start talking up here, and then 2 hours later, I might start talking down here. And it's a gradual process, so I might not even be aware that it's happening. I have personally found that having some kind of voice cue, whether it be like a specific noise that plays in the background, a song, or something, just something to kind of remind you to maintain your voice and maintain your training. And then vocal warm-ups. Always want to do vocal warm-ups before you're doing like exercise with your voice, basically, because like I said, it's a muscle. So lots of singers do these all the time. So you can pretty much take any vocal warm-up that's meant for singing and use it for yourself. So yeah, that's kind of how to get into the prep or some prior knowledge you want to have beforehand. So we're going to get into ways to practice. So of course you can do like those vocal exercises and stuff, but like what good are all those exercises and warm-ups if you don't actually have a way to put those into practice? So for me, I used to read stories. So me and my friends would get into a call and then we would read fan fictions together, and I would usually be the one to read most of it. Sometimes they'd help with voices, but the whole purpose of it was just to basically practice my voice training. And there's also singing. So as I have mentioned over and over and over, singers do so much voice training so that they can sing better. So of course, singing is a very practical way to have a better, to not have a better voice, but have a voice that you're more happy with, to kind of put those voice training techniques into practice. I will say that singing doesn't always translate to your speaking voice, but getting better at singing will naturally enhance your speaking voice. So there is some overlap, but just keep in mind that there might be other things that you specifically have to focus on if you're looking to enhance your talking voice. There's also noises. You can just make noises and have fun with it. I think this is probably the most fun way to practice voice training. It might not be the most practical, but it's fun and it's a way to kind of train your voice and develop a mastery over your vocal cords anyways. So it's definitely an option, and it could be all kinds of noises, animal noises. If you want to sound like a microwave, go ahead, I guess. So character impressions. If you want to sound like one of your favorite characters, what better way to, try to sound like them than literally do an impression and train your voice to do an impression? That's definitely a way that you can get into it too. And like I said, that's something that voice actors do. And then of course, the most direct and practical way is just to talk a lot. Don't hurt your voice. Of course, listen to your voice if you're feeling uncomfortable. Give yourself some rest. But most importantly, just have fun. Like there are some wrong ways to kind of do voice training. We'll get into those later. But overall, you can kind of, it's very freeform whenever it comes to this. So don't be afraid to experiment and see what works for you. So let's move on to self-care. I think this is the most important part whenever it comes to voice training. I myself have made the mistake of not practicing good self-care, and it can cause a lot of insecurity. It can cause a lot of just emotional distress. Um, so I think if there's any of these sides that you're gonna like take me very seriously on, please listen to this one. Firstly, take breaks and rest days if you need them. And you are going to need them. I promise you. Don't think that you can just kind of push through everything, especially if your voice is not feeling good. You can cause damage to your voice with vocal strain. So listen to your body, take breaks. You know, when you're taking breaks, make sure to hydrate. And also, you should avoid eating before doing vocal exercises. This one I actually did not know for the longest time. I learned this one this year. So you don't really want to have a full meal because kind of like with any type of exercise, you can get cramps if you eat after a meal. And just like, you know, all kinds of nasty stuff can happen. So you usually want to avoid eating. If you have a full meal, it's recommended to wait an hour or more. Like if you plan on eating before doing vocal exercises, you can have a light snack. And then another big one is good posture. Your posture plays a super important role in your voice, way more than you might think at first. Like right now, I'm sitting up straight, but then if I hunch over, I feel like you can kind of, hold on, let me hunch over like this. If I hunch over like this, you can kind of hear it in my voice. Versus whenever I sit up, my voice is a lot more clear. It feels better to speak with good posture. You can breathe a lot better. So learning breath control. And there are lots of sources on Google, and there's also going to be some sources on the next slide that you guys can use as reference. But definitely learn your breathing techniques. Be mindful of your posture, because this will enhance the sound of your voice. And then also know your limits and dangers. So I've been talking about vocal strain. And vocal strain, it's basically when you're overusing your vocal cords, and it can cause injury to them. And this can also happen while you're sick. So if you are sick and it's affecting your voice, I would recommend probably don't do vocal training while you're sick. Let your body just heal, get into gear. Of course, stay hydrated, take care of yourself, because you don't want to do anything that might damage your voice, because sometimes it can take days to heal from vocal strain. It can take weeks, and sometimes in the worst cases, it can be permanent. So listen to your body. Understand your limits. If you just can't hit a specific note that you're looking for, then slowly work towards that. So if I wanted to hit a super high note today and I just might not be able to do that, I can say, all right, I'm going to do voice training and, see in maybe half a year to a year, see if I'm ready. You definitely want to give yourself time whenever it comes to voice training. That means don't push yourself too hard. Going back to the tuner example, so say that my natural speaking voice is at like a C on the note scale. I personally recommend that you would raise that about a note or two higher. So say we're wanting to go from C to D. I would say do your vocal warm-ups. Put your practice, read, sing, do all those things, and then mark a day in the next month where you kind of just log your progress. I would say to log your progress pretty often. You can do it every week, every 2 weeks, every month. I feel like that helps with kind of like saying, hey, I'm actually making some progress. And it also helps pace yourself. So you're not pushing yourself too fast, because if I'm going from C to D, sure, I might be able to do that and hold it within the first week, but that might not necessarily mean that I'm ready to move on to like E or something. So, yeah, biggest thing is understand your body, listen to your body whenever it's hurting or when it needs a break, and take care of yourself with proper posture, proper breathing, and proper hydration. Basically, all I have is just some pointers, some sources to check out, because I know, especially for a lot of trans people that I've met, and whenever I was a lot younger and new to my trans journey and my voice training journey, I didn't really know where to look. So these are some sources that you can kind of look at. Of course, this is not a comprehensive list. This is more so just to give you an idea of where you can start looking. You could find other creators from these, other sources. So there's Healthy Vocal Techniques on YouTube. Victoria Victorious, I think, is the actual app for her channel. And she is like a vocal teacher. So she actually trains singers of all different types of skill levels. And she has tons and tons of videos that are wonderful about how to practice with your voice. Her like videos focus more on singing, but just because they're about like singing vocal training doesn't mean it doesn't apply to just your speaking voice as well. It's very much applicable, so look her up if you're interested in that. There's also trans voice lessons. As far as I know, trans voice lessons, her stuff focuses more on trans feminine people, or people looking to feminize or have a higher voice. And then there's trans vocal training. I haven't seen too much from trans vocal training myself. I've checked out a couple of their videos. They have someone for trans masculine people or people who want to sound a little more androgynous. So definitely check them out on YouTube if that is more your type of thing. And of course, you can always just consult Google. All kinds of tips and guides for vocal training online. As it relates to speaking, singing, voice acting, anything, I promise they are all applicable to whatever you're wanting to do with your voice. So if something says, oh, this is for voice training for singers, don't feel discouraged, because oftentimes a lot of those videos still have techniques and tips that you can use in a lot of other ways. Voice training is very flexible in that regard. So that kind of does it for this slide. That's the final slide. It's pretty informative. Oh, no, thank you so much for coming by. I'm glad that you got something out of it. I hope everybody who is speaking here, or speaking, I was the only one speaking. I hope everyone who is listening is what I mean. I hope you all got something out of that.